I'm Connor Old, and this is Old's Oscar Countdown, and here we are. I'm back, baby. I'm here for season 2 of the 2018 Oscars, the Oscar race. If you're new to the series, I know always say that, getting into the rhythm of things, but if you're coming from Masters of Controlled Chaos, series, welcome back, or welcome to this new series. If you're from the original Oscars channel and maybe left away for Masters of Controlled Chaos, not just saying, hey, that's okay, maybe you're an Oscar guy, you come back, you hear my opinions, my knowledgeable opinions, which I do sort of know that if I know movies pretty generally, but I do know the Oscars very well, I believe. So if either fan base is coming back, maybe you're just a fan of my channel, of course, I'd love to hear comments, like the video, tell your friends about it. I'd love to hear this create this great film community. But either way, what this new series is just going through each and every single week, breaking down a new category and talking about the general idea of who I think is going to win, some of the possible ones. And last year, I didn't receive any complaints, but I sort of criticized myself in the sense of, I started off with Best Picture, and each and every week I went down, and then I sort of combined them as the weeks went on. Some of the more generic or less specific categories that I didn't need to think deserve their own episode. I put those together. But then I realized by the end of it, I did do a final Oscars compilation before the Oscar nominations came out, but what I didn't do last year is the Best Picture, I didn't really update it. Because last year I said The Jungle Book could get in, Silence, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, and that's because it's early, just like it is now. I'm seeing these movies, but who really knows what's going to get in? We don't know the sort of guilds that tell us the sort of key factors before the Oscar nominations, and then the penultimate, the Oscars, which is now in early March. So this is going to be a really long process, but to be honest, I can't wait. I've had such a fun time last year. I can't believe it's 1 year. But like I said, with that problem, it wasn't really updated as much as I want. So now what I'm going to do is keep the same format every week. I'm going to break down a new category. But at the beginning of the video, I'm going to talk about sort of a little segment, a little Old Oscar Countdown corner, maybe, or Connor's Corner. How about that? Yeah. Connor's Corner, I like that. And just a segment at the beginning where I talk about some hot movies, some movies that are sort of falling, sort of the rise and tide of things. Last year I would have said Silence. We sort of see the guilds come out, and that movie definitely fell down. And this year I can look at something like Downsizing, a movie I really enjoyed, but it's got 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. It started off hot. People don't really like it, so it's going to fall down. I don't think it's going to get any nominations. So stuff like that will be the following ones. Or last year I would have said Hidden Figures is one to watch. That wasn't even on my radar because it hadn't really been shown at TIFF, but it was this interesting sort of that unique case of that December 25th now. It used to be a big thing, but now it's sort of a unique case. That rising. So, I always want to keep it up in terms of, best actresses, best actors. I do those at the beginning. So the Old Oscar Countdown, the Connor's Corner, won't necessarily be just Best Picture. It could be just anything. It could be Saoirse Ronan from Lady Bird is really rising. She's really hot. She's going to go in there. You know what I mean? So little things like that. Because something like Blade Runner, if I did this 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't even talked about it because there was uncertainty. But now it's okay, it's sort of rising. It's getting a little hot. People really like it. But then the box office doesn't do well, so it starts to go down, right? So these ebbs and flows. I'm going to do this every single week for the most part, unless things, not really any changes happen, and I'll just go right into the episode. But anyways, let's start with my number 1 pick, which is Dunkirk. Okay, Dunkirk, I put it in the number 1 spot because, not necessarily because I think it's going to win, but because it's this huge war epic. It is very similar to what I think a Saving Private Ryan would be. If you remember, Saving Private Ryan went up against Shakespeare in Love, lost to Shakespeare in Love in sort of a controversial Oscar year. Looking back at it now, it's ooh, yeah, I definitely would have picked Saving Private Ryan, but it didn't win. That was sort of the Weinstein machine there, but Saving Private Ryan was released in the summer and sort of gained that momentum and built. Dunkirk's the same way. It's released in the summer, big commercial and critical hit, and Christopher Nolan is past due. He didn't get nominated for directing for Inception or for Dark Knight. Of course, The Dark Knight was the one movie to actually didn't get nominated for Best Picture, and then a lot of people were mad about that, so that's why they extended it to a maximum of 10 pictures for Best Picture. So he's had a lot of impact on the Oscars silently. Christopher Nolan. Inception was a big hit. Sort of, what was that year? It upset. Was that the year of, I think that was the year of King's Speech and Social Network. I think that was a good year, but sort of upset that sort of a little bit because it was sort of an unknown. But you have that commercial hit, you have that success. The Dunkirk fans are strong, although they are sort of a tight-knit group. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't think this is going to win at all, really, because we see this is definitely a situation of The Revenant, or even something like last year of La La Land, where because how the Oscar Best Picture voting works, it's very different than any other category. What they do is, instead of picking who they think they should win, they rank their choices. So they go, Dunkirk, then blank, then blank, then blank, then blank. Don't want to spoil my list. And then, but the thing is, with Revenant and with La La Land, what I think happened is La La Land, for example, got so much hype that when people saw it later on, they're like, oh, it was all right, it was an okay movie. So a lot of people were, number 1, this is my favorite movie of the year. And then a lot of people were like, it's number 5. Same thing with The Revenant. Either you really loved it or you respected it. I think The Revenant's a way better comparison to Dunkirk because a lot of people, they say, oh, I really loved it, it's a great suspense movie. Maybe on my camp, one of my favorite movies of the year is Dunkirk. But then other people are like, yeah, it was a good movie, I respected it. A lot of people did not get emotionally attached to it like they wanted to. Maybe the hype was too big for them. So I think it's going to get a lot of number 1 votes and a lot of number 5 votes. But as we've seen over the past 2 years, something like a Spotlight, something like a Moonlight, it was a great sort of a movie where a lot of people really enjoyed it. It was a great movie. Not a lot of haters or detractors from that movie. So it got a lot of number 2 votes, a lot of number 3 votes. So it's like, oh yeah, I like that one. That was a good one. Not my favorite of the year, but it was a good one. It was a good one. But those things, those small good ones, those 2s, those 3s, they add up, they build up. And we see Moonlight upset last year. Even Spotlight upset the year before that. This new system is totally throwing off the Oscars. And I think this year, Dunkirk's not going to win. It could be that number 1 movie that people think it's going to win. It's a lot of people are thinking, it's going to get a lot of nominations, which I do agree as well. I think it's going to get Best Picture, but I don't think it's going to win. However, that just the success factors of Nolan is overdue, critical and commercial hit. And really just a movie that everyone likes, and sort of we haven't had a big sort of war epic. Even Hacksaw Ridge was a smaller movie. This is sort of a big, grandiose seat in the theaters, action-packed, or not action-packed, but like just suspense-filled, like on the thrill of your seat, great movie. And I think it's going to get through, and the Oscars really do like Christopher Nolan. Anyways, let's move over into now number 2. Oh, hold on. I just want to point out something new I'm doing this year, just what I think it's going to get, just an overview. So I'm thinking possibly supporting actor, but really that's another thing that it's not going to necessarily get, because it's not going to get, I don't think, any writing. I don't think it's going to get, unless it's in adapted, because adapted is very weak this year. So it's not going to get writing, it's not going to get any actor nominations, possibly Mark Rylance for Best Supporting Actor, but with no lead acting and no writing, the odds are not in its favor for sure. But I think it's going to get a big push from Warner Brothers. However, if Blade Runner starts to do good and Wonder Woman, they'll have to split their ways, maybe, or maybe choose a horse in the race. I think they're going to go with Dunkirk. That's just a guess, but so I'm thinking though. Cinematography for sure, director for sure, picture, and then maybe, sound editing, sound mixing, things like that. But I think with the lack of actors and the lack of writing, it's not going to win, but I do think it's going to get in. So now number 2 is Call Me By Your Name. This is definitely a number 2 movie, the Moonlight of this year, if you could say that. It's this, out of Sundance, it was this movie that had the buzz, and Mudbound. Mudbound has fallen off, and this has sort of stayed there. This is the Manchester by the Sea of last year in terms of it stayed since Sundance. However, it's the Moonlight of this year because it's a smaller movie done by an unknown director. His previous movie was a bigger splash, which I've seen, which is different and unique, I'll say that. And but a lot of people have seen this movie. I have not seen this movie, but I think Luca Guadagnino is the director's name. I've heard just great things about him and directing this movie. I think from all aspects, I think it could get in score, possibly even cinematography, but the acting and the script is where this shines. I think this is going to win a Best Adapted Screenplay, and because the acting's so high, people think Timothée Chalamet will get in for Best Lead Actor. You have 2 actors for Best Supporting Actor in terms of Armie Hammer and Michael Stolberg. Both of them can get in. I think Michael Stolberg will stay in, but the sort of acting prowess is there. It's strong. You got a great story, a great script. I think a lot of people will really enjoy this movie. I've not seen it, but it could be that number 2 that sort of stays along. And we've seen it since Sundance. It sort of stayed in the groundswell of people saying its name. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. It's just sort of building up to this sort of crescendo. And I think it could definitely sort of ride the second place, sort of the first place winner, and become the actual winner in the victory. I say this because I'm a cross country runner. I was. I'm not very good at it, but I love love running and love cross-country running. And even if you watch the Olympics or track and field, of anything like our track, what they do is that the guy who's in front for the most of the laps is not going to be the winner. The thing is he's in the front, so he's taking all the wind when he's running. And he's running, he's a front runner, that's what they call him. And then you have the guys really in the 2 and the 3 slot. They're behind him. He's taking the front runner's taking all the wind. Or in the movie scenario, he's taking all the backlash. Oh, this is not the best movie of the year. This was Moonlight last year. Riding behind La La Land's coattails. La La Land's not the best movie. Oh, it's overrated. No, it's amazing. And then he gets tied for the last lap, and because he's not the second runner, hasn't been getting any of the wind or any of the hate, he quickly slides to the right, runs in front of him, and he could be in second and third place for the entire race. But for that last lap, that very crucial last lap, they pull out ahead and they win. That's why you see the first place runner, watch if you see the Olympics or whatnot, they're never the one that actually wins. It's the second and third that stay in the pack, that reserve the energy, and then boom, they hit it, and they just sprint and they go around. That could be in the movie scenario, Sundance. That could be Call Me By Your Name. Sort of Genslov's respect from Sundance. People really like it. Things like Dunkirk. Oh, it's divisive. It's a law of what it flies. And then Call Me By Your Name. This number 2, really great movie, not a lot of criticism. Sleeps behind it, boom, wins. I'm not going to be blindsided by it this year. I was blindsided by it last year with La La Land. I was not blindsided by it with The Revenant and Spotlight. It's hard to say this year because this is an interesting year where I don't know who's going to win. Any movie could win at this point, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to do it. But Call Me By Your Name could be that sort of sleeper hit. Watch out. And number 3 is The Post. If you haven't heard of this movie, that's because it's at number 3, because this could be the movie that is so obvious and wins it, but it's not released yet. We haven't heard anything from it. It hasn't done the traditional TIFF run. However, it's a Steven Spielberg movie. Boom, that tells you a lot, right? And it stars Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep. And boom, Meryl Streep, of course, gets 20 nominations. She's won 3 times. Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks has won twice. They're big Oscar favorites. Tom Hanks has been getting on the sort of edge. He didn't get Bridge of Spies, he didn't get Sully, he didn't get Captain Phillips. All performances which I think he actually should have got in those respective nominations. He hasn't gotten. So I think he's a little bit overdue. Meryl Streep could be a little bit overdue. She was a big favorite last year in terms of the speech that she made, but she still didn't win. Emma Stone ended up winning, but maybe this is her vehicle to get back. The problem is I think this could very much win. I'm very excited for it. I could get a lot of sort of range of things like Call Me By Your Name, and could be sort of that one that people rally behind. It's a journalism movie like Spotlight, so it could be sort of a united movie of telling the truth, especially in this era in America of fake news and divisiveness. This could be a really unifying movie. Spielberg is never to be underestimated. He is the greatest director of all time, in my opinion. And really, if you look at his past movies, if you don't look at BFG, because BFG was a March release date, it was not designed for the Oscars, but you look at his Oscar-y push movies, or aside from BFG, his last 3 movies were Bridge of Spies, which won 1 Oscar and got 7 nominations, Lincoln, which got 10 or 11 nominations and won 2, War Horse, which got 6 nominations. So his last 3 movies have been these Oscar-y type movies. People really enjoy it. He got nominated for directing for Lincoln, and I think that it could be seen as your dad movie, at least Bridge of Spies, which was just totally not. It's such a great movie. But it could be seen as that. However, I think Spielberg, this could be his year where he gets another Oscar, where this wins for Best Picture. I think actor and actress, both could work. The problem is we haven't seen the movie. We've only heard a little bit of whispers. We haven't seen it, so it could be a bomb, it could fail. It also has that really interesting December 25th release date. That and, I don't think it's December, I'm not sure if it's December 25th, but that and Untitled, a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which we will be talking about a little bit later, both have the interesting release date of having the December 25th slot, which nowadays really you want your movie to premiere at TIFF and to go on and sort of build momentum until the Oscars. That's sort of a great crescendo. But now there's very few movies that do so. It was sort of a popular divisive thing to just get it in right before the end. We saw The Revenant did this really well. Hidden Figures last year did this really well, where they're both late December movies that become these huge hit successes. American Sniper also did this. These last movies that really get a lot of play in January, get a limited release in December, get a lot of play in January, do really well, and could become the success. However, American Sniper, Revenant, and Hidden Figures, not any of them have won. But this is an interesting year. This is a wide open year. Normally years I've said, like last year I walked out and I saw La La Land, I was like, that's winning Best Picture. It didn't, however most people thought it would. Spotlight I walked out of and I was like, that's winning Best Picture. Birdman I walked out of and said, that's winning Best Picture. However, I've not seen all of the movies. At TIFF, I can only see a certain weekend, and I missed some of the movies that I want to see because of time restrictions and because I have school and I'm away from home. And nonetheless, it's just, I haven't really seen that movie that's like totally it. So the race is totally wide open. So I'm thinking The Post, I'm thinking director, best actor, best actress. Possibly, no one's really talking about best supporting actress for Carrie Coon, for all the TV lovers. I love The Leftovers. Love to see her get in, even though I haven't seen it. Best screenplay, best score, John Williams. This could be a total sweep, not in terms of all the categories, but in terms of just a groundswell of getting a lot of nominations. People really like this movie. And like I said, that 2 and 3, it could definitely work out to be like that, or it could be a bad movie. Who knows? I'm sort of putting a little bit of a risk on that because I haven't seen it. I don't know. Okay, now number 4 is The Shape of Water. This is seen as a huge comeback film for Guillermo del Toro because his past movies haven't necessarily been the Oscar love that people want to. This is definitely a smaller movie. It's definitely a weird movie. If you remember Pan's Labyrinth, that got a lot of love. Being a foreign film, it still got a lot of love. And I think he's still a respected director. I think directing he's able to do of... They say every lover of movies will like this because it's got a little bit of horror, a little bit of romance, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of drama. It's just this great amalgamation of things. It's about like a fish, essentially a fish man, great by Doug Jones. I love the trailers. I love his movie. He's an incredible physical actor. He's also done plenty of other stuff with Guillermo del Toro. So Doug Jones, and then Sally Hawkins, who I think will get in for Best Actress. So their relationship, it's a weird movie, it's a quirky movie. I don't think it could win, but it's getting a lot of support. People really enjoy this movie. I haven't seen it. I could be very much on that boat. It could be my favorite movie of the year. Who knows? But for right now, I don't have too much to say about it. It's just, I sort of find it hard to win because of the weirdness. Could be something that people are very passionate about, but for the sort of older members, they'll be like, this is stupid. This is a fish and a girl and they're trying to get married. But it could be that Beauty and the Beast story. But I'm thinking a lot of nominations for this one for sure. Directing, picture, screenplay for sure. Richard Jenkins for Best Supporting Actor. Sally Hawkins for Best Supporting, actress, right? Octavia Spencer for Best Supporting Actress. So possibly 3 acting nominations, a score, cinematography, visual effects, makeup and hairstyling. I think it's going to get nominations across the board. I think it's going to win a couple for sure. And that could bring it to its success. You know, it could be sort of like an Arrival where it gets a lot of nominations, but ultimately doesn't win, but it still will have a lot of support. I think it's going to win at least 1 Oscar, and it could sort of propel itself to that win and sort of be that unique, sort of weird, sort of escapist movie in that sense. So now let's move over into my 5th pick, Darkest Hour. All right, Darkest Hour. This is a movie that's very Oscar-y. It's sort of like a British, from what I've seen, it's a British movie that's of a British actor playing a great historical figure, although people have said it transcends that. For me, I think it's going to get in for Best Picture. If anything, this is pretty close to a lock because I've heard great things. It's very Oscar-y, the movie, if I can label it that way. And Gary Oldman, I've heard great things, sort of transforms as that lead. The one thing I worry about is that Gary Oldman will overshadow it, and maybe someone like Joe Wright won't get in for director. He's sort of on the cusp right now. But I've heard great things. I think the screenplay is going to get in, cinematography, makeup and hairstyling across the board. And it's directed by Joe Wright, who I mentioned, who they like, and I actually have some stats here. His last few movies, aside from Pan, which, oh my God, what a terrible movie, is Anna Karenina, which was nominated for 5 Oscars, won 1. Atonement was nominated for 7, won 1. And Pride and Prejudice was nominated for 4. So I think he's got a great streak going on him. I think Gary Oldman is possibly a lock for nomination, could possibly even win. I wanted to see this at TIFF, but I couldn't, just unfortunate scenarios. I couldn't actually get tickets, so that is what it is. But I've heard great things from this movie. Sort of a great uniting movie, although this also clashes with Dunkirk because the events of Dunkirk occur in Darkest Hour. So they say it's a great companion piece, but that could sort of split it of these 2 war movies. One that's very much about the war and on the battleground, and one that's about the politics and this great historical figure, Winston Churchill. But I think that people really enjoy this movie, but I don't think they're going to love this movie necessarily. Maybe they will. Maybe this is the big Oscar play. I don't see it right now. It's not got a lot of momentum, but I do think it's going to be staying there. It's going to have a great staying power. It's going to get a lot of nominations, and it's going to get BAFTA. It's going to get SAG. It's going to get just at DGAs, I think possibly for Joe Wright. It's hard to say right now, but it's got a lot of momentum, a lot of steam, and people really enjoy this movie. And like I said, a lot of nominations. So now, number 6, this is maybe a little bit of a surprise, but Get Out. Get Out was a fantastic movie that started off in February, and then like sort of an ex machina. Actually, an ex machina is a bad example, but this great movie that people love. It's got 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics rave about this movie so much. I think a lot of people have seen it. If they haven't seen it, it's already on Blu-ray, it's already on disc, that they can watch it, they can rent it on iTunes, all that stuff. I love this movie. I have seen this one, and just a really sort of scary, with some comedic moments in terms of the political humor that it injects, especially in the States. This political thing and the divide of race could very much propel it to win. That'd be great to see, but I think this is very much a Mad Max scenario. That's the example I was pulling for. Mad Max released in May. And people were really surprised by it. Get Out, people were really surprised by it. And there's sort of passionate fans, and maybe they're saying, I want Get Out to win, but I know it won't. So I want Mad Max to win, and it ultimately didn't. But I think Jordan Peele could possibly get in for directing. I don't see it right now, but screenplay is very smart, it's very witty. I think it's for sure going to get into. Original screenplay is a very, very tough category this year. But Get Out, I think, will get in. I think it can get in as that sort of populist vote, that they've been wanting to get of. People really like this movie, and it's a great movie, so put it in, you know. They've sort of been doing a lot of the, snobby, all these small indie movies that no one's seen, but people have seen Get Out. It's a big sort of commercial success. People really enjoy this movie. I really enjoy this movie. The fans are there, so if they want to appease the sort of people, or, the older voters will hear that it's a good movie, or really enjoy it themselves. I think they can really enjoy it, and that could very much be it. So now let's move over. Actually, one last point I want to say is that horror never does very well in this, but it got that social, racial aspect to it, so it could do very well. So let's move over to my 7th pick, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. All right, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. An incredibly long name, but I saw this one at TIFF. I really enjoyed it. Not one of my favorites of the year, but definitely in the top 10 right now. Frances McDormand does an amazing job. She's going to get nominated for sure. It's just this amazing comedy, dark, twisted sort of comedy. Because it is very dark at times, by Martin McDonagh, the guy who does 7 Psychopaths and In Bruges, 2 movies I really like. I like this movie just as much. It has a great ensemble cast. That means someone like Sam Rockwell could get in for Best Supporting Actor, but also it has the special thing, which is it won TIFF People's Choice Award. It was number 1, and they actually announced that at my screening. So if you look at it here, so this is actually a great telltale sign of the winners, or at least getting in for the nomination. And something like Shape of Water was at TIFF. Call Me by Your Name was at TIFF. Darkest Hours at TIFF. But, what came in number 1? 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And if you look at last year's People's Choice Award, La La Land, which record-breaking nomination. Then before that was Room, plenty of nominations. Then before that, Imitation Game. Then before that, 12 Years a Slave. So they've been great at predicting, at least the people's at TIFF. I voted for the movies, and they do a great job at predicting movies that sort of have a lot of this is not necessarily an Oscar thing, but they've done a great predictor of year and year to come. This is not a movie where it's like, okay, it's not going to get in a weird, obscure foreign movie. This is a movie of Martin McDonagh, a director who's very well respected in the Broadway or sort of play sense. He's written a few plays. He's respected in the film community, and I think he's finally coming up and getting his Oscar-deserved love. Frances McDormand can in, like I said, that Sam Rockwell. It's got a very funny, very witty, sharp script. So like I said, original screenplay is going to be very hard this year, but I think it's going to get in. It's gained a lot of momentum. People weren't sure about how well it's going to do, but when they saw it, they were like, wow, that was like really good. Like, Martin McDonagh has done great movies. In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths are great movies, but this is sort of a level above it. The amount of filmmaking, even something like the cinematography, how the movie's paced. It ended a little bit weird, but the relationships between the characters, how brutally honest it is, how brutally funny it is, and just, like I said, the incredible cast of ensemble people. I think it's going to do really, really well, and I think it's going to get nominated. Okay, number 8 is the untitled Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It's getting rumored that it's called Phantom Thread, but for this one, like I said, it's got that December 25th release date, so it's going to be sort of hard for it to really push through and get it unless it becomes a box office success. Could be a failure like sort of Inherent Vice didn't do very well, but you look beyond that, The Master, look beyond that, There Will Be Blood. I think for sure, if anything, this is Daniel Day-Lewis's supposedly last role. He's retiring from acting after this because I don't know, it takes too much of a toll on the guy. But you look at something like There Will Be Blood, right? Daniel Day-Lewis wins the Oscar for that. The cinematography wins, it gets nominated. I think Paul Thomas Anderson got nominated for directing. So last time they paired up, there was this great movie. I think it's almost I hear these two things, I'm like, wow, could be a really, really good movie, but we haven't seen it. And sometimes an incredible performance, which Daniel Day-Lewis, before that, he did There Will Be Blood, then he did Lincoln. Back-to-back Oscar wins, and he's won 3. He's won 3, so he could win 4, which will be incredible. The Academy loves him, so if this comes out to be a good movie, not only will they support Daniel Day-Lewis, but they will support the movie. I put it in an A spot right now because I think it's maybe falling. We haven't seen it. Could be a bad movie. We don't know. Something like The Post, I think Steven Spielberg has a better track record than something like PTA because of Inherent Vice, because of The Master, which only got like 3 nominations, and they are all for acting. And I think cinematography even too, but he sort of had an interesting track record. I think he's a great director, but he could not necessarily maybe put out a movie that's financially successful and could get it over that December 25th sort of placement, that odd placement. And we haven't seen anything from it. No trailers, just an image, so we'll see. Anyways, number 9, Lady Bird. This was a huge, big surprise from director and writer Greta Gerwig, starring Saoirse Ronan. And this was a huge surprise at Telluride. This and Shape of Water both won that People's Choice Award. This and The Shape of Water both won the People's Choice Awards. This is definitely a movie that's rising in the ranks. I think it could get in for Best Original Screenplay, although it is on the cusp because of how competitive the screenplay category is. I think Saoirse Ronan's going to get in for acting. Greta Gerwig was in a bit for the conversation of directing. Apparently this is a really great sort of interesting, rebellious, coming-of-age movie that's funny, but it's also honest, similar to Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. However, I have not seen it. But it seems like sort of a sweet, enjoyable movie. Maybe it's a comparison to Brooklyn, but maybe it's Saoirse Ronan, but I find the comparison to Brooklyn sort of interesting, where it's sort of an 8 movie. No one really predicted that to win. It was sort of in their last slots, but it still got in as a nomination because it's sweet, it's maybe easy to love, and this one has a little bit more of an edge to it, but that edge could be a little maybe taken by the spot of Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. However, right now, I think the first 7 are pretty good right now. I'm pretty confident about those, but the 8, 9, and 10, I don't even think there's going to be 10. I think there's going to be 7 or 8 this year, just that interesting year, and what's going to be that final spot could be Lady Bird. Also could be my next movie. Could be my next movie, which is Wonder Woman. Now, this is my final movie in my top 10. And this is very interesting because I think not a lot of people have it right now. However, I think they're going to be surprised by how well it does. If you remember last year, Deadpool, no one had Deadpool, and then all of a sudden it got I think the WGA nomination and the PGA nomination. And people are like, what? Whoa, slow down, Deadpool. That could be possibly it. You know, it's a superhero movie that people really enjoyed, sort of the Get Out of this year, of that early February movie. But actually didn't get up at nominating. Only 9 were nominated, which is still a lot. Not the full 10, but 9. And I think that Wonder Woman, in light of recent events, especially the Harvey Weinstein sort of sexual assault events, it's sort of something I don't really want to say, but it's true in terms of Wonder Woman is a very positive movie. It's a very female-centric, strong female characters movie where people who don't even like superhero movies, women were going to the theater, they're crying because they didn't know what they were missing. This is a strong, great female character that has been missing. Patty Jenkins has the incredible story of she hasn't directed a movie since Monster, and she comes back with this great movie. It was the #1 movie of the summer domestically. Makes $120 million worldwide. Just an incredible feat and success. And I think a lot of people, especially women, will rally behind this movie and really get it pushed through. Plus, you have that superhero crowd. They want to appeal to the popularity. They want to appeal to the people. Wonder Woman could get it, and I think a lot of people are totally sleeping on this movie. And I think they're very passionate about this emotional story that has great off-screen and on-screen. I really enjoyed the movie. I didn't love it. It might not. I don't think it's going to crack my top 10 for this year because of the weak third act. But the first 2 acts were really incredible. Chris Pine and Gal Gadot do a great job together, and I think this is going to be a superhero movie that stands the decades. And but going back to the Dunkirk thing, Dunkirk was also a success, and it's also from Warner Brothers. So I'm not sure if Warner Brothers will push for that. I think this movie will have enough fan support that will push itself through. Although we'll have to see. People aren't really thinking it at all, but I say so. We'll see. So some possibles now. The first possible is Blade Runner 2049. This was gaining momentum. It seemed to be like an unknown because it missed TIFF. People weren't sure if it would be that great, although it hasn't done very well at the box office. Although people really enjoy this movie. It has a passionate fan base. They like Denis Villeneuve. It could do very well internationally and make its money back. Who knows? But box office aside, I've seen this movie. It's one of my favorite of the years. It keeps you thinking. Denis Villeneuve delivers again. And like Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve has a lot of sort of fans that can maybe get through it. And, you know, oh, this is the guy from Arrival, even Sicario, you know, that was well respected. Or even sort of Prisoners. So he's sort of been gaining his respect. And people really enjoy this movie. The cinematography, I think, is going to get in for sure. I think it's going to win. Roger Deakins deserves it. But it could lack in terms of the acting and no screenplay, possibly score. But I think this is why it's impossible right now, because Warner Brothers, I think, is going to push for Dunkirk and then Wonder Woman over this movie. However, it's got that fall release date, could get in. However, I think it increased because of how well it did, but now sort of falling back down again, and I'm not sure it's going to get in. Another possible is the Florida Project. A24 has shown not to be messed with last year with Moonlight. They won. This is the small indie distributor that really pushed and got Moonlight the win. The problem is they have two movies this year in Lady Bird and in the Florida Project. So which one are they going to go with? Some people think the Florida Project. I'm putting my bets on right now just for Lady Bird, but I'm not sure. I could be biting my tongue later on and say Florida Project could be big. Sean Baker could get in for Best Director. It's the sort of a Moonlight type movie where it's A24. It's a small movie. It doesn't have any big names in it, but I think someone like Willem Dafoe will get in for Best Supporting Actor, possibly win that category. And does that mean, you know, normally the actors or actresses who win in their respective categories normally have a movie in the top 10. So depending on how A24 splits it, they may focus all their baskets on Lady Bird or all on Florida Project, or do a little bit of both. Hard to say right now, but they also have something like The Disaster Artist. James Franco is trying to get in, and he's also trying to get in for Best Adapted Screenplay. So they're a little split this year. They don't have one horse to put all their eggs on, so it's going to be interesting. I think the Florida Project, however, will get sort of put out to the side. But if it does get in, it could get I think it's going to get supporting actor and maybe some other things, cinematography possibly, production design even. And then for my final one is Mudbound. This is another Sundance favorite. I saw this one at TIFF, really enjoyed it. Very visceral, sort of brutal movie, incredible ensemble. I think adapted screenplay will get in for the nomination because it's very much lyrical and poetic. I can tell it's a book movie with the multiple different types of narration. Dee Rees, the director of this movie, does an incredible job at it. People are even considering her for director and not having the movie for picture. However, that's why I don't think she's going to get in for director, because I don't think the picture's going to get in, because I think Sundance rarely has two movies that come through and stay. I think people have chosen Call Me By Your Name in this weird way and not this movie, same way last year they chose Manchester by the Sea and not Birth of a Nation. There comes where there's 2 or 3 frontrunners that come out and they sort of only one gets weeded out, and I think Calling By Your Name is sort of the definitive one, which is a shame, but it very well could get supporting actors for someone like Mary J. Blige. And it's a very dramatic movie. It's very typical, along with their Darkest Hour type movies, but it's hard to say. Right now I'm saying no to Mudbound, but it's a possibility. And then all the possibilities include The Big Sick, Downsizing, Battle of the Sexes. That could get in, but right now I think my first 5 are pretty good for that lock. We always know sort of the first 5-ish, and then the rest is sort of hard to predict, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, I'm Connor Roll. Make sure you like the video, comment below. Let me know your pictures. It was a long episode, but I just have so much passion. I want to get all this stuff out. Next week, I think we're going to do Best Actress. That should be a lot of fun and really an interesting race, because last year was super interesting. This year, I think, is also interesting, especially for that number 5 slot. I think the first 3 are sort of good for locks, but the next 4 and 5, and it's going to be very interchangeably. We'll see. We don't know yet. But anyways, guys, I can't wait until that episode. I'm Connor Roll, and until next time, stay tuned.